Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the MasterBooks webinar, and it's all about the high school level of language lessons for Living Education series. And I'm so excited to have this discussion with you. As many know, Sarah is my co-writer for levels 9 through 12. We spent a long time developing level 9. And then Sarah jumped into level 10 about the time that I got real distracted with some health issues with my mom, caretaking for her. And Sarah took the lion's share of the work on that, for which I was very, very grateful. And she did a fantastic job. And so now she's jumping into levels 11 and 12. And they are coming together splendidly. I'm super excited about it. And I'm still involved in the process, but Sarah's doing the lion's share of the writing. And we are really excited about talking about the high school level of language lessons for living education. So welcome, Sarah. And maybe you can start off just telling a little bit about you.
A little bit about me. I homeschool 5 boys. I've graduated 2 of them. Still working on the other 3. I love language arts. I always have. I ended up getting a degree in English. And, you have kids and you decide you want to homeschool and you're kind of like, when am I ever going to use this degree? Well, here I am using this degree. Not only the degree, but also the approximately 18 years of homeschool experience that I've had too, which is super important, I think, when writing curriculum for homeschoolers, that you have that experience.
Absolutely. And what some people may not know is that we have known each other for many years. I did not add up those years, but we were kids.
I think I was like 5 years old. I have memories of you.
Yeah. We, to give some context, we went to church together. We went to a private school together. Randy and I are a little bit older than Sarah and her husband, Dave.
Just a wee bit.
Just a little bit.
The gap gets smaller as we age.
It's true. That's true. And my husband actually helped set them up on a field trip that we were chaperoning. So Anyway, just some fun facts.
He's a matchmaker.
Yes. And we have been good friends ever since. Just took a family vacation together to Yellowstone. That was a blast. But professionally, we've also worked together. Sarah worked for a company that I owned, Pennywise Learning, many years ago. And so I already knew a little bit about Sarah's talents and abilities. And so I was really eager to bring her on as one of my co-writers for the language lesson series. And I have had no regrets. It's been super fun. We've had a blast with it. So why don't we just jump right into the high school levels? So I'm going to do the interviewing and I'll interject some things along the way, but I'm going to let Sarah do a lot of the talking for this. So let's start in. Sarah, how do you properly use the high school levels of language lessons for living education?
Well, specifically, talking front matter, back matter.
So I just got this wonderful book from my 9th grader. I got this wonderful book for my 10th grader. I'm about to start setting up my homeschooling. So what do I do?
Super important. The first thing you are going to do is you are going to find the front matter, which is in the very front. Just a lot of really important things in there to understand how the program works, to understand the method behind it, the philosophy, what to expect. Just super important to go through that. And it's really such a quick read. It's not a lot, but you'll feel so much more prepared in understanding the flow of the curriculum. And then super important to the assignment sheet, which I go through and I just actually put the date that assignment is due. And it gives me a chance to write in there too, if we have a day off or a vacation, and my students can see exactly what they're supposed to do that day. So I usually do maybe 3 weeks at a time. That's just the system I have, because life changes and we have unexpected things happen. And then I always make sure that I just run a highlighter through the review area, because that's where I'm actually going to stick a grade. So that's really helpful. The back matter. I love the back matter more than the front matter. And this is how I view the back matter. You're on a deserted island. You're starving. Your clothes are worn out. You find a treasure chest. Do you want it to be full of gold coins, or do you want it to have food and dry clothing in it? I'm going for the food and dry clothing. So that's what the back matter is. Like, that's going to help you so much as an instructor. It's got so many tools in it, so many valuable things. So you want to really go to the table of contents for that. Get familiar with it. There's so many things, especially, the back of 9 has a lot. But the back of 10, we actually offered more than just templates, worksheets. So you're actually going to be pulling those out and using them for your student. I did that this morning because my son is on the historical narrative essay. So these are tear out pages. So for the historical narrative essay, there's a sheet that gives them space to write an outline, and then a very detailed instruction on how to start that essay, and actually room on the back side of it to finish a full 5-paragraph essay. So there's just a lot in the back matter, and you want to make yourself familiar with that for sure. So that's where I would start.
Okay, that sounds good. How about you talk a little bit about the answer key for the reviews, because we've had a little bit of confusion there of where to find those answers for the reviews.
Yes. There's been a little confusion because in level 9, we did not have the review key separated from the regular answer key, but levels 7 and 8 do. Level 10 does. The reprint of 9 will have the review key separated. So we've had a couple people, you're going through the answer key and all of a sudden there's nothing for day 5, because day 5 is the review and it's not in the answer key. It's because it's behind the answer key. And the reason for that is, especially in middle school and high school, if parents want to use those reviews for a quiz or a test, then they can pull out the review answer key and keep that separated to be viewed as a test. So that was the reason.
And that offers flexibility to families, because some families, like my family, I allow my students to grade their own work as they go along. So they'll do a day's worth of work, and then they'll go to the answer key, which is kept in a special place. They can pull out the answer key, check their answers. If they get something wrong, they can mark it wrong, go fix it, come back and make sure that it's right. And then I grade anything like papers or quizzes, tests, that sort of thing. And that would allow me to pull out those answers and store them in a separate place. So it doesn't impact so much the families where the parents do all the grading, right. But with MasterBooks, we do try to have our materials as flexible as possible, because, all of us families, all of us homeschoolers are so different. We all approach life and homeschooling and our systems completely different. And even the same families will change those things up from year to year, depending on what's going on.
Yeah. The season of life. I had one student, I was doing all the correcting. And then when you have 5 students, it's like, you need to correct your own work. I'll handle the quizzes, essays, tests, but you're going to do the rest of it.
Right. And sometimes you change it up depending on the subject. You might have a kid that can maybe handle doing all of their own, except maybe with math. Yeah. So we just want to be really, really flexible. And we probably should have noticed that the reviews were together in level 9, but we missed it. And so that's going to be corrected. So if you do have that older printing of level 9, it is being updated. And so just, check out behind it if you don't immediately see the review, or if the reviews are mixed in, then you'll know you just have that older copy. Yeah. So let's do a walkthrough of each day. So tell me about, as a homeschool mom, if I am brand new to language lessons for living education, the high school levels, tell me how this works. Walk through a week's worth of lessons. Tell me about what's happening and what I can expect. What's kind of the rhythm?
Rhythm is the best thing about language lessons for living education. The rhythm is so predictable. The instructor and the student know exactly what to expect every day. There is a pattern. We know that kids and adults thrive with pattern, predictability, schedule. So the day one, as we'll call it, is a special feature day. And the special feature days I love because they just, I think they give the students such an experience with the richness of literature and communication, including art and hymns and poem studies, scripture studies. It's just sort of a fun day, which I love the first day of the week. And, some people they want day one to be Monday every week, right? Through Friday. Sometimes our schedules get a little mixed up and it's not Monday where the special feature lands, but it's kind of like a Monday morning and your brain needs to get moving, but it needs some time. And so I think that these special features are just sort of a fun and creative, engaging way to get students' brains going again to start the week out. And there's a lot in there, there's worldview in there. There's lots of times, even if it's not a scripture study, there's still scripture and so much truth in there, whether it's a poem or a hymn or a picture study. Day one also includes vocabulary. So I know that in level 9, the vocabulary was all taken from Pilgrim's Progress. So really great way to help the student then engage with and understand better the book they're going to be reading and answering questions about on day 4. They get that prep work on day 1. We did the same thing in level 10 with Life of Washington. All the vocabulary words come from the particular reading the student is doing that week. And in the second half of level 10, they're no longer reading a companion book, but there's excerpts for the third quarter. They read the first chapter of a book called Gifted Mind, the man who invented the MRI. And this first chapter is called The Truth. And I remember talking with Randy one time, and he said it was the greatest single chapter he'd ever read in a book. And I said, if Randy said that, I need to read this chapter. And so I just thought that's a great chapter for worldview. There's just so much in there. And so, again, the vocabulary words on day 1 are all words that the student will encounter in that particular reading from The Truth. And the same thing happens in the fourth quarter where they're reading an excerpts from the Summit.
Now, just to clarify, they don't need the books that you're taking excerpts from. Those are not required, but Washington is required for level 10.
Life of Washington is required, and very important that you get the MasterBooks version of that book because there's very specific page numbers the students are reading each week for what part of it they're analyzing. So that's important too.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, can you talk to me a little bit about the vocabulary feature? So what are some helpful ways that students can interact with the vocabulary to really increase understanding and for it to stick? Right.
So on those vocabulary days, there's a little checkbox where the students are supposed to write those vocab words along with their definition on an index card. And then usually in the back matter, remember that treasure chest that you're going to get your dry clothes and your food from? That also has some ideas, some little games, some ways to help make those words stick. I think the best way they stick is when the students read them in context. So that's why it's beautiful that they are reading the book, that they will see these words in. Usually the exercises that we have them do with the vocabulary words include writing sentences and including the word in your sentence. So that's helpful as well.
Okay, and then we've also included those initial check boxes. Can you tell me a little bit more about those?
So level 10, do you want to see the check boxes? Is this what you're talking about?
Sure, yep.
Okay, so The end of the vocabulary lesson each day also has the scripture verse that the student will read, write down, and memorize that week. They have till the review day, day 5, to say that verse. And so we've begun including these little check boxes. And the reason these are so nice is because lots of times, at least my kids, I have 5 boys, maybe your kids are a little bit more paying attention than mine are. But once they see that all of their lines are filled in, all of the writing is done, they close the book and I'm done. And they ignore that it says independent reading, vocabulary study, memorize the scripture verse. But when there's a checkbox there that the student actually has to go and put a check in that box, our students are very unlikely to lie and say, yes, I wrote down that scripture verse and put a check mark there. My kids aren't going to do that. And it also helps me. I see the checkbox isn't checked. Did you write down this verse? Did you write down your vocabulary words? Oh, I forgot, Mom. Okay, let's get that done. I want to see the check mark in that box. So those check boxes, I think, really help just with accountability, making sure for the student and the parent that those really important items are not skipped, even though they're just reading.
Right, right. Now, we talked about adapting in the context of the structure and how, our homeschool functions. How about adapting within the lessons themselves? Can you talk about that before we get too much farther down the road in our little walkthrough of the week?
Yeah, so I think adapting. So let's take day 1, for instance, right? And it says, to use the index cards to write down each vocabulary word from this lesson on one side and the definition on the other side. Maybe your student is one, and I have a couple of boys like this, where they have a lot of writing to do in all of their subjects, and that's just a lot more writing to add to them. Some kids love to write. They want to make their vocabulary cards and make them nice and neat and put little stickers on them, and we have all different types of students, right? My students, not so much. So to adapt that, I could say, you know what? I'm just going to ask you, honey, what are lamentations? What does that mean? I'm going to kind of verbally quiz them instead of having them write them on the index cards. Disposition, could you use that in a sentence for me? Some kids will it'll really stick if they have a conversation with their mother about it, as opposed to writing it down and their brain is not even there. So that's one way you could adapt it. Then there's the copy the scripture verse on the index card. My son, who's doing level 10 right now, memorizing is just a difficult thing for him. And he does have an awful lot of reading and a big workload this year. So what I've told him with the scripture memorization is I want you to read that scripture, think about that scripture, write that scripture on an index card. You're going to save your index cards. At the end of each quarter, I want you to pick one of those verses that you're going to memorize and say to me at the quarterly review time. So that's how I've adapted that for him. But your student, if your student is, you think, capable of memorizing those every single week and saying them to you, by all means, push them to what you think they can do.
All right, that sounds good. Can you go through day 2 of the lesson?
Day 2 is grammar. People love it or hate it, right? Some people love to talk grammar, speak grammar, discuss its nuances. For some people, it's just like, why? And I have teenage boys, and grammar to them is, why do I need to know this, Mama? Why do I need to know? Why do I have to memorize the state of being verbs? When am I ever going to use this? Are there parts about grammar that they're unlikely to encounter even going to college? Yeah, honestly, I have a 4-year degree in English, and I never had to identify a preposition in college, not once. But yet we're teaching this to our students, and we're having them try and memorize the list of prepositions. And I think it's all important, and it's all very helpful, but we can't get too hung up on it. Like, why can't my student remember the prepositions? Have them try their best. But honestly, these are things that, as a college student, as an adult, you have opportunity to look them up. See them as something that's a reference. You wouldn't expect your child to memorize the dictionary, right? They use it, it's a reference. And a lot of grammar type things, we need to see it that way as well, and not worry that our students aren't retaining it all. I think the big grammatical errors, such as using your and your wrong, there, and they're wrong. Those are the big glaring things that just say, is this person educated? Right? Those are the big mistakes that can be made that would make somebody question your intelligence or your understanding of the language. So I think if we can at least get our students to avoid those big errors, and a lot of that is they're reading quality literature and they're hearing the English language spoken properly. Those are the things that are really going to stick rather than memorizing charts. But the grammar days, I have kind of a practical approach. You're not going to see big, long sentences where they have to try and identify different clauses. I keep the sentences fairly short because I think that students just need to clearly see what we're trying to show them without a whole lot of other clutter in there that can make it confusing for them. And in the high school levels, I've put in a lot of, it's called Review It. So whenever I have space in a lesson that I'm writing, I stick in a Review It. And a Review It is going to take matter from 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and bring it back around to the student, and sometimes include some of the new concepts they just learned today so that they're constantly getting that reinforcement throughout the course.
Yeah, I like that. I know that the vocabulary in levels 11 and 12, can you talk a little bit about that? I guess we're bouncing back to, would that be in the grammar section or would that be in the day one?
That would be in day one. However, you're kind of right about it being in the grammar section because I'm trying to incorporate some of those words from the vocabulary list like into the sentences I use for exercises in the grammar portion. So they will show up again, not all of them. So levels 11 and 12 will feature vocabulary words that students would most likely encounter on SAT, ACT, college prep type vocabulary words. And I'm only giving them 7 words per week because I want them to really engage with those words. I don't want to give them a whole bunch of words and the retention isn't there. So it's 7 words a week, but times 36, that's a lot of vocabulary words that they are spending that week engaging with. So that will be a change because levels 9 and 10 take the vocabulary from the companion books and the worldview analysis. So that'll be a little bit different for 11 and 12.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And I just want to remind our listeners that the approach that Language Lessons has with grammar is a very practical approach. Mm-hmm. How we view grammar is a tool. It's a tool for understanding language, both the language that we hear, the language that we speak, and the language that we write. And by using grammar, it helps us identify the way that it's used so that we can apply it properly. And so rather than it being just these charts that we memorize, we want the student to actually apply it in their writing, apply it when they're discussing something. We want them to be able to identify all the different parts of speech so that they can add clarity, they can add even complexity to their writing. And so it really just all comes together, and we need to view it as a tool instead of an end in and of itself.
Yes, exactly.
Because there's really no point in learning grammar if it's not going to improve communication skills.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so now we're on day 3, which is the communication day.
Yes.
We start off, let's talk about essays that you have worked into the communication days, and then a little bit about your approach to citation.
All right, so in level 9, there were 5 different types of essays, and I really took a long time walking the students through writing those essays. Level 10 is a little quicker with the essay writing. I'm expecting a little bit more of them, and so I don't hold their hand quite as much. However, in that little treasure trove in the back, like I said, you really want to use those because they are specific to the essay that's being taught. So it even says the historic narrative essay. So each essay has its own title back here. These aren't charts that you or worksheets that you would need to photocopy, tear them out, staple them together. So that's kind of where I walk them through. I'm not taking the lesson space to walk them through it. If they just fill this out, they'll be well on their way to writing a really good essay. Because I did that because in level 10, they have 2 big writing assignments. One is a biography. So they're reading the life of Washington. They're seeing what a biography is. I do some instruction on biography, but they're going to choose a person from history. And encourage them to find somebody that there's probably a lot of information on. You don't want to choose somebody that's going to be really difficult for you to find any research on them. And I walk them through that process. So that takes a long time. That takes the a bulk of the first half of the year writing their biography. The second half of the year, they get to write an autobiography, which I think is going to be really fun for some students because you don't have, it's not going to be the same type of research as when you're writing about somebody else. You're writing about yourself. So I think this is going to be a great chance for students to take time to self-reflect, to interview family members, to maybe learn about their ancestry, to learn about things maybe they didn't know surrounding the story of their birth. So many things, so many ways that they can connect with who they are and who God's created them to be. So those are 2 big assignments and why I kind of kept the essays a little bit smaller and didn't spend so much time introducing them. There's also oral presentations on this day. So they're going to present their biography and they're going to present their autobiography. So I think that that's a great way to get students to speak publicly, but on a topic that they're very confident in because they just spent time writing both of those things. And so their thoughts are all right there, which I think makes the oral presentation a bit easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm excited about that. And I love that you included in some ideas about even getting the students to interview family members and finding out about their own history, because I think that adds some excitement and interest for the student about their biography because they're learning new things, even about themselves and their lives. I think that's a lot of fun. I just learned something new. My great grandmother was a Rosie the Riveter. She actually riveted the airplane in Buffalo.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so you just never know what students might uncover and how much fun a project like this can actually be.
Yeah. And how much it would mean, if grandma was approached to be a part of a student writing this autobiography.
Right.
For family members to have a part in a student's education, I think is just a special thing. If I was grandma, I would appreciate my granddaughter coming and interviewing me for her paper. That would be fun.
It would be fun. A lot of fun.
Citations.
Let's roll into day 4, which is worldview.
We forgot about citations. Should we go back to that?
I'm sorry. I'm glad you jumped back. I got stuck to the whole autobiography thing. I completely forgot about citations, and I definitely want to talk about it because I love the approach that you did for citations. Now, in case people are wondering, my work was primarily, I set the structure, I set the tone for the whole language lesson series, but my focus has been on the special feature, the day 1, and on days 4, and then we share day 5. You paid particular attention to the grammar and the communication. Those are the days that you wrote primarily. And then in the later levels, even though you did the heavy hitting on the other days, including days 1 and 4, you followed my pattern, my instruction.
Yes.
And my
absolutely.
style. Okay,
Just an awesome pattern you set up. Thank you so much.
so that people understand is you're giving a lot more information on certain days, and I may interject a lot
Yes.
more on the
Yes.
other day's discussion. But when it comes to the citations, this was all you. And I love the way that you did it. I mean, we talked about different ways, and I'm really glad that you settled on this particular approach because it really makes sense. So before I say anything else, go ahead and explain it. And I think our families will like the mindset behind it as well.
So, truth be told, I don't love citations. I mean, it's just something that, when you tell a student they do need to do a works cited page and they need to keep track, like, honestly, it can be very intimidating and it can be very confusing. And there's thick books, and it's difficult to figure out sometimes what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Proper citation. And there's so many different ways to do it. So what I've done is kept it pretty simple because I've graduated 2 students. One did not go the college route. The other one did. And so I got to see, he did the dual enrollment for 11th and 12th grade. So I got to see in 11th and 12th grade how a college professor requires citations, what their expectations are, at least in this circumstance. And it kind of gave me a little bit of insight. And I thought, you know what, we cannot overburden or over challenge our high school students with this. You do not need to come out of high school being proficient in MLA, APA, Chicago style. You don't. Your college professors are going to show you exactly what you need to do. They're going to tell you what style, and they're also going to give you a bunch of examples. My student always had a whole bunch of examples of what the professor wanted for these citations. So what I did was I tried to simplify it as best I could, which was difficult because you're taking a whole lot of information, condensing it down into bite-size kind of amounts that a high school student could handle and comprehend and work with. I wanted to take the fear out of it. So level 9 teaches the Chicago style. Level 10 teaches MLA. Level 11 will teach the APA style, and level 12 will offer a review of all 3 of those. So I kept it simple in teaching really just how to cite a website and a book. You can go on into how to cite different types of medical journals and how to cite an audiobook and how to cite, there's so many, but honestly, it's just like with the dictionary. You just have to look those things up when you get to that point where you're needing to cite something like that. So I do also offer the students that chance to, if you want to cite something other than a book or a website, with a parent's permission, you could do an online search and see how to do that. But I'm not going to require that of students. The other thing I want to mention while we're at it is, remember this curriculum is a tool for you to use. If writing a bibliography or works cited page, all that would be extremely overwhelming for your student. Maybe your student is on a different type of path that isn't going to include college writing. You could always have them try to put together their works cited page, but I would suggest not grading them negatively if it doesn't work out.
Right. And I think that it's important for students just to understand that citing is important if you're going to use somebody else's work,
Right.
And understand that there's multiple ways to do it. And they can always do a quick search as an adult if they need to remember, I forget, okay, how do I cite this again? And so I'll do a quick search and just, okay, that's right. That's how, okay, this is the order, dot my
how we all roll these days, right?
Right.
We have all this information at our fingertips.
Yes.
And so I want them to see the process and the types of information that they need to gather together to give proper citations. And that's it. But really just work with it as far as your student goes. Your student well, and make it work for them and you. Don't pull your hair out over it.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, let's roll into day 4, the worldview in literary analysis.
Yes.
Now, level 9, we've talked about, does require the Pilgrim's Progress book. The biggest confusion point, or question, I should say, that families have had is, do I have to use the Pilgrim's Progress journal edition? And we highly recommend it. The page numbers match up. There is the Answers in Genesis all-in-one curriculum book that you could use because it includes the worldview excerpts. But even then, you've got this great big huge book,
Yeah.
and it's just so much better. It's just a small investment to pick up that journey journal.
Yeah.
There's lots of places that they can write notes. They can really make it theirs. In addition, it has those extra worldview excerpts that is used in the course that you're not going to find in any other version of Pilgrim's Progress. And it's just fun. And can I also add that you can buy that edition of Pilgrim's Progress, the journal edition, and give it as a Christmas gift.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that nice.
Yeah.
So, I would highly suggest using the one that's meant for the course.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then we have The Life of Washington for level 10. And then 11 and 12, I believe we're not going to have a required.
11 and 12, right. They won't have a companion book to purchase with them. They will feature excerpts, literature excerpts, really going for a wide variety with that. And so all the reading that the student would need would be contained in the book, other than if you want to give them a reading list, which we suggest.
Right. That's actually, it's really more than just a suggestion. It's really required for a well-rounded course.
Yes.
And with language lessons, we don't tell the students exactly what book to read, when to read it, how fast to read it. We want students to be reading, and for them, it should be a joint process as they utilize that wonderful list in the back of the book where they can track the books that they're reading. What I like to do is I like to talk with, I've got just boys left now. You did have girls, but they've all graduated. But I love to talk with my boys, and I did it with my girls too. Let's select the books that you're going to read. And so depending on the student, we may have a nice big stack, of books, or we may have a smaller stack.
Right.
We may have 2 or 3 really thick books. It just depends on the student. But I like to work with them on our literature goals. And I don't even mind throwing in some quick reads that might be what I consider more along the lines of junk food, candy,
Right.
Not going to have very much of it, but once in a while, it's okay just to throw one of those in, as long as we're getting in some meatier selections as well.
Yeah.
And then I like to use those. I like to write it all down, and then the student can kind of check it off as they've gotten it read. They might want to put a date down, something like that. But you really up-leveled that list with level 9. And so we have added a little extra oomph to that list. Can you tell me just a little bit about that?
So that list, I actually did this with my kids because I've always done little reading lists. And I thought, I want to give them some say, in it, as far as them picking. So usually they'll pick some books, I'll pick some books. We'll get the book list together. But the book list in the back of the high school levels, and 7 and 8 too, include it as well. There's a space for the student to review the book based on, a 0 to 10 scale. Is this the worst book you've ever read, or highly recommend? And so my students always enjoy when they can cross off that book and they can rate it. It gives me an idea too of what they like to read. Having 5 boys spread out 11 years, I can look back and say, wow, my oldest really loved this book. So I can tell the youngest, you know what, your brother loved this book. He rated it a 10 plus. So I like that little rating system that we added in there, so the students can have some say in how they felt about the book.
Yeah, I like that too. But we definitely want families to be adding additional literature to the program. This isn't just this, I've got a supplement. No, it's built in. We put in reminders to make sure that you're getting that extra reading in. But we didn't want to be heavy-handed with it, make all those decisions, because families are so different. Students are so different. And I would like my students just to be reading for the sake of reading instead of reading to have to answer questions.
Right.
Because you know what? If I have to read a book because I have to answer questions, that's going to lose some of that joy.
Yeah,
And,
it does.
you know, we do want to make sure that they're actually reading and maybe having some discussions about it.
Mhm.
But do we really want them every single page to just be focused on, oh, I got to find this word, I got to answer this question? You know, we want them to enjoy what they're reading. So just a little side rant on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so day 5 is the review day. And so let's just go through a few of the features we have where they're going to update that book list. We have the memory verse, and we talked about adapting how we do some of these features. Can you talk to me about whether to have it open book, not open book? Talk to me a little bit about that.
I have always had the philosophy of open book for a couple reasons. One, I love that the student is looking back and reading the correct information. I think it reinforces that information, and then they write the answer down correctly, we hope. Where if they are not allowed to look back and they write down answers that are wrong, I feel like that sort of just almost reinforces the wrong instead of them just seeing the right and getting a chance to write down the right answer again. And you could do a hybrid of that. You could do where your student has open book for the first 8 lessons. And then at the end of the quarter, it's not open book, just to sort of test their retention if you wanted to. But I like the idea of open book. It's worked well for me so far. My student who is at Liberty University right now online, he's doing fabulously, does very well taking tests, even though I gave him open book all the way through. And he doesn't have that now. He's doing fantastic.
Another option that you can do is you can just give them access to the study sheets in the back of the book,
Yes.
Things like that. So there are various ways that you can do it, but I just wanted to throw out there just some different approaches. Now, you've offered up some grading methods that families can use along with rubrics. Can you explain how to use a rubric and the different grading options?
So let me find a rubric back here. The way they are set up, and there's one for each of the writing assignments. It's not like one size fits all. So we have them for each of the essay types, and we've got them for, this is the autobiography rubric, biography rubric. We even have them for the oral presentation. So along the side, you'll see it goes from 60%, 70%, 80, 90, 100. So you've got these charts. Let's just pick out the, we'll say the definition essay rubric. So along the top, we've got structure, expression, definition, word choice, grammar, and punctuation. Down the side here, we've got 100%, 90%, and so on. So what we want is for the student to read this before they even do the assignment. The student needs to know this is the expectation. If I'm aiming for between a 90 and 100, this is what I need to do. So an example for structure, to get between a 90 and 100%, paragraphs include topics, supporting and concluding sentences that are varied and engaging. Proper transitional words were used to link paragraphs. Topic or word clearly defined and thoroughly explored, and the length requirement met. Right? That's what they're aiming for. Now down at the bottom, the 60% would look like this. Paragraphs are not designed well, sentence structure is weak, the topic is not clearly defined, and the length is insufficient. So if the student familiarizes themselves with this, they come to know what's to be expected. And then this is what the instructor is going to grade based on. Now, of course, you're the teacher. A lot of these grades are subject to your opinion, right? Lots of times you know your student and you see that they've done, like, this is just a fantastic effort for them. Reward them and give them a good grade for it, even if their grammar wasn't perfect, right? That's up to you. You're the teacher. So when it says, 100%, 90, just decide somewhere in there. Pick a number. 93 sounds great. But these really give you a lot of detail. It goes into the grammar and expressions, word choices, language used, and essays that require citation. The rubric includes that too, that sources were properly cited.
Okay, so it's a really helpful, very good tool. And I really love allowing the student to see it first so that they understand the expectation and what goes into an excellent essay or writing project.
And right in the instructions, the student is told to check out the autobiography rubric before you start writing so you know what's expected of you. So I do give them that instruction right in the lesson.
Perfect. Okay, so we have talked a little bit about the required books and how they're used. And I would say that, like with the Pilgrim's Progress Journal, they're referencing it constantly.
Right.
Their vocabularies, words are there as well as in the book. There's those extra worldview. They're going through the Pilgrim's Progress book little by little as they work through the course. The Life of Washington is used in the first half, definitely required because they have to look things up in those books, and they have to understand the content. And you can speak a little bit to Life of Washington, but in Pilgrim's Progress, there's a lot of worldview discussions in it, and so it really is absolutely necessary. About Life of Washington, are they doing literary analysis and worldview work?
Yes, there's a lot of worldview work in there. There's also a lot of literary devices that I get to teach because the book is so rich in them. Some of them are, I had them written down here. Sure, where are they? Authorial intrusion. There's imagery. I've got this somewhere. I thought I had them written down.
So great.
There's a lot of just literary definitions, and then I encourage them to use them in their writing as well. So they look for them in Life of Washington, and we work with it that way. The other thing too with Life of Washington is in the back of level 10 on page 465. I think this is really critical. I'm getting it in the right spot here. This is a list of American and British generals. And the perforation and the lines there are meant for this to be cut out and folded in half and used as a bookmark. Because as I myself was reading through it, the Revolutionary War is a big part of the first half of the book. And it just gets pretty confusing because there's so many different generals and so many different battles going on that you're like, oh, was that a British general or was that? And so this will really, really help them. If they keep that as a bookmarker, it will help them keep track and comprehend what's going on. So it's really important that they have that information.
Wonderful. Now, just to recap a little bit about choosing that additional literature, we did discuss extra literature a little bit, but we really want to focus on what the student is interested in. Taking a look at the chapter length when we're assigning, if you assign how soon you want it read, and then what are the goals that you have for the student for that year. And it's also not a bad idea to map out the high school years of what your goals are for each of those years and build in the books that support those goals. Now, what I'd like to have is a real quick discussion because we're way over on time here. Let's talk just real quick about how the language lessons for living education prepares high school students for success. So, I'm just going to give a real quick list, and then you jump in there after I give the list if there's anything that you'd particularly like to highlight. Yeah. So language lessons covers vocabulary. It develops critical thinking. There's literary analysis, which is so important as a life skill for the rest of their life, regardless of what they're doing. There's the same with communication skills. And communication is very broad. It's verbal, it's written, it's body language, it's manners, all sorts of things like that. All all in the one big communication package instead of just written alone. And then we have the worldview, which involves persuasion and influencing culture. And so is there anything there that you'd like to just real quickly expound on?
I really think that the way we learn how we come across, right? Our body language, our confidence, our respect is so important in our students succeeding in life. So they can have all of the grammar rules memorized, they can know how to cite things, but if they come across in a way that is unprofessional or arrogant or disrespectful in any way, that really just shoots you down, doesn't it?
Right.
So I think that language lessons prepares them, because it's not just about the textbook side only, right? It's about the heart. So in level 10, I do a segment called Wisdom Speaks. And so that takes communication tips from the book of Proverbs and helps the student apply them to their life, and how they listen, how they act, the look on their face, their body language, how they communicate with God, how they really pay attention and listen to others, how they show respect to others by being on time, by doing what they say they're going to do. These are all life skills that they have to be developed. We need to model them in front of our students. And so I love that language lessons looks at the spiritual side of it's a whole person, right? It's language arts for the whole person, language arts for the soul.
I like that, definitely.
Language arts for the soul, because, I was in a Christian school my whole life. And so I never had sat in front of an instructor. We did a self-paced, self-taught type of curriculum. And I remember when I was going to go to college, family members being concerned that I've never been in a classroom in my entire life. How are you going to handle college? You've never sat and listened to an instructor.
Right.
The way I handled college was that I had been taught to be on time. I had been taught to complete my work. I had been taught to be respectful. I had been taught to ask questions when I didn't understand something. So I was hugely successful in college because I had those skills. It didn't matter that I had never sat in a classroom with an instructor before. So I think that those are the skills that our students are going to need to communicate and to be successful. And I think language lessons does all of that.
Yeah, the way that I picture is the student takes in a feast, a biblically rich feast, and then learns how to take that feast to communicate it. And I know my goal and my heart in writing this series is to equip students to be able to not only receive the gospel, which is, of course, 100% important, but also to be able to communicate that gospel to their generation. Mm-hmm. So we're going to wrap this up now. There's a couple little housekeeping notes that we need to cover. One is that level 10 has a missing chart in the earlier printings. And so you can get that free printable download online. Just go to the level 10 page on the MasterBooks website and you can do that. Give me a bit of an update. I mean, I know where we're at, but you share it with our listeners, an update on the expected release dates for levels 11 and 12, which, by the way, I'm starting to see some things come in from 11 that Sarah and I have been reviewing, and I'm super excited. So go ahead.
Yeah, 11 is well on its way. We've got the first quarter written, partway through the second quarter. We're excited at how that's coming together. I'm hoping that we see a winter 2025 release on that. It would not be available for this coming school year, but if you have an 11th or 12th grader, really level 10, even level 9, depending on what they want to read, check them both out. Absolutely. I'm using this for my 11th grader this year. So just because level 11 isn't going to be out for next school year doesn't mean you can't use language lessons.
Maybe we'll pull it off and get it out by then.
Who knows? We're going to try. And then level 12, we're hoping for a release before the end of 2025. So we'll have them all eventually. It's coming.
It's coming. And then how exciting to have all the levels, the whole series done and complete.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah, for joining me here. And I am super excited about answering the questions that our moms have. So we will jump right into answering questions. But I appreciate you taking time today to just, chat all things high school language lessons for a living education.
Love to talk about it. So thanks for having me.